This is the end game. So it looks like these BRICS nations are really getting serious about taking out the US dollar. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, he declared that the process is already in motion, and they're working on some game-changing initiatives to threaten the US dollar reserve system. One major piece of the puzzle? Oil. So what do you guys think about this? Do you feel like the US dollar is safe, or should we be looking at other safe haven assets? Drop me a quick comment down below. We are really going to get into it with this one, guys. So first, there's Russia that's involved in de-dollarization talks with the Islamic world to create an independent financial system. Could definitely give the greenback a run for its money. And guess what? Iraq just joined the party too. They announced a major ban on doing business or personal deals in US dollars. Over the past few days, senior political leaders in most parts of West Asia, they have been making their own statements about this, suggesting the dollar's days of dominance may be numbered. BlackRock's bond chief also warned about the looming US debt default. He said that if the country ends up defaulting on its debt or even hints at a default happening, this could make a major dent on the dollar's clout as the world's reserve currency. But hey, don't panic yet. Some are saying that the whole thing is for the purpose of a one world economic system. But hey, BRICS nations, they don't really need to destroy the dollar themselves, do they? Our government's doing a pretty bang up job of destroying it themselves. The BRICS are outside of the burning building that we set fire to, pointing out the smoke and the flames, telling others to exit the building and save themselves. What do you guys think? Now, the dollar isn't going extinct. At least not quite yet, but it's definitely feeling the heat from some fierce competitors. We're talking about the yuan, gold, and a few other financial assets that are slowly creeping up and stealing the limelight. There could definitely be a financial opportunity if you timed it right. So yeah, for all of those savvy investors looking to stay ahead of the game, this one's for you guys. Make sure you do not miss this episode. Y'all ready? By the way, for the best way to invest in gold or silver, check out the links in the description down below of this video. The de-dollarization has begun. That is according to Russian Foreign Secretary Sergei Lavrov. So he was at the 31st Assembly of the Council of Foreign and Defense Policy when he said this, quote, "De-dollarization has begun, both in practice and in conceptual speeches," end quote. Now, he also mentioned that countries around the world are already moving toward de-dollarization, and many nations are supporting it. They especially highlighted Brazil's suggestion that the BRICS nations should seriously think about protecting financial transactions within the assembly and safeguarding its new development bank from the dollar's continued dominance, basically insulating their economy away from the US and the dollar. So Lavrov said this, quote, "We are putting forward many other initiatives concerning this issue," end quote. He even mentioned that they've got backing from several allies with like-minded friends in reducing the influence of the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Lavrov claimed that the West has been sending representatives to other countries demanding that they sever most, if not all, of their trade, economic, and investment connections with Russia. This is after their full-scale invasion of Ukraine last year. He also pointed out how, quote, "Western nations know well how to play the difficulties they themselves create for other countries, and they will probably have a certain result, a certain benefit in the short term," end quote. Then he added, quote, "But in the long term, they and first and foremost the Americans are hewing down on the bow on which they are sitting, including the roles of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the role of the dollar in the world's economy," end quote. They're already working on an independent financial system within the Islamic world. They say that Russia is shifting its focus toward the East to create a more balanced world. They're currently in talks about ditching the dollar and establishing a new financial system that is not controlled by the old powers, the US and our allies. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alex Overchuk, he shared that they're having extensive discussions with the Islamic world covering these topics and other related matters. Now, during this International Economic Forum of the Russia-Islamic world, Overchuk stated, quote, "Our relations with the countries of the Islamic world cannot but be influenced by the global shifts that are currently taking place and the global trends. We are talking about processes of de-dollarization and the creation of an independent financial system," end quote. Now, they're also optimistic about this whole thing, saying, quote, "The broader agenda and how it affects countries and relationships enables us to see the relations between Russia and the Islamic states have a very large and very positive future. The government is doing a lot to ensure further development along those lines," end quote. So really, it's time we talked about what would happen if the dollar loses its reserve status. To answer that, let's break it down and understand why some people want to change the dollar's current status. Now, there are a couple of factors behind the dollar's international reserve currency position. Now, one is the petrodollar system, where most global oil transactions happen in dollars. Since oil trade involves massive amounts of money every single day, and all countries need energy, the demand for dollars to facilitate these transactions is enormous. But it's not just about oil. There's a broader need for a universal currency. I mean, just imagine a Brazilian farmer selling soybeans to a Japanese condiment company. It's pretty unlikely that the Japanese company would have Brazilian dollars to pay the farmer, and the farmer wouldn't necessarily want Japanese yen either. So yeah, the logical solution is to use an intermediary like dollars. Convert yen to dollars, buy the soybean with dollars, and then convert the dollars into the farmer's local currency. Now, according to the Federal Reserve, between 1999 and 2019, the dollar was used in 96% of international trade transactions in the Americas, 74% in Asia, 79% globally. Banks worldwide use dollars for about 60% of their foreign deposits and loans. Additionally, almost 90% of all transactions in the foreign exchange market involve the US dollar. However, things have changed recently. In 2022, the United States imposed extensive sanctions on Russia after their invasion of Ukraine. So this woke up these countries and realized how big a threat the US and the dollar are to their supposed independent economies. World leaders didn't appreciate the idea that their funds could be frozen due to a diplomatic or military dispute. Not to mention, all of this inflation is just chipping away at the dollar's international standing. So for decades, the US maintained a low and steady inflation rate, which made people confident in holding their assets in dollars. But over the past year, inflation has skyrocketed, raising concerns about the dollar's security and stability for long-term savings and investments. And as if that wasn't enough, 2023 brought a regional banking crisis. American banks that people thought were too big to fail, like Silvergate, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature, and First Republic Bank, they failed one after another, while others remain on the edge of the bankruptcy cliff. Now, I mean, bank failures are usually associated with struggling emerging markets, not the financial capital of the world. So yeah, leaders of countries like China, India, and Brazil, they're pushing for direct trading in their own currency, bypassing the US dollar entirely. So this would gradually reduce the role of the dollar and create a multipolar financial world where emerging economies would have more influence in global affairs. Now, this is not an overnight thing, mind you. It is highly unlikely that just one day the whole world would just stop using and stop caring about dollars. We've seen with the British pound that it takes a long process for a currency to lose its prominence in the global economy and to become a second-tier player. But let's just say that the US dollar gradually loses its top spot in the financial world. What would happen next? Well, for the United States, it would probably mean less access to money, higher borrowing costs, and lower stock market values, among other things. Being the world's reserve currency has allowed the United States to run big deficits in international trade and government spending. If foreigners no longer want to hold dollars as a safe bet, it would force the United States to tighten its belt significantly. Translation: higher credit card bills, sky-high mortgage rates, stock investors running for the exits. Later down the line, layoffs and homes could be lost. Then, of course, there's that US debt default that just keeps dangling over our heads, right? So the chief investment officer of global fixed income at BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, he warned that if the United States defaults on its debt, it could diminish the dollar's status as the world's global reserve currency. In a recent interview, they said, quote, "Normally, the flight to quality in the world is into US dollars. But after sanctions and the dynamic around de-dollarization post-pandemic, international investors are inclined to diversify. When people ask if the dollar is going to use its reserve currency status, I think that's dubious. Even so, we keep chipping away at the impenetrable armor of the dollar," end quote. Wow. So it won't exactly stay impenetrable for long. Some alternative assets to consider: Chinese yuan, gold, Bitcoin, the euro, and that common BRICS currency that they're talking about. So first, you got the Chinese yuan. Beijing has been trying to grow their international adoption of its currency for years. In the past year alone, China's been paying for almost all of its Russian oil imports in its own currency to counter sanctions against Moscow over the Ukraine war. So they're definitely getting the groundwork running. Then, of course, there's gold. Central banks have been snapping up gold, a traditional store of value, amid the global debate over de-dollarization. Just this month, the Central Bank of Zimbabwe adopted gold to back the first sale of its digital currency, the digital Zimbabwe dollar. Country wants to ease the demand for greenbacks following a plunge in its local fiat currency, which was unpegged from the US dollar in 2019. The first quarter of 2023, central banks snapped up 228 tons of gold that were added to global reserves, a 176% increase from a year ago. And yes, Bitcoin and crypto are still a thing. China's yuan has been issued in a digital format, which had sparked a de-dollarization debate even back in 2021 when it was still undergoing public testing. Even Zimbabwe launched this digital Zimbabwe dollar just this month, backed by gold. Meanwhile, emerging nations El Salvador and Central African Republic, they have adopted Bitcoin as an official currency. El Salvador even added Bitcoin to its national reserves. And then, of course, there's the euro. So let's not forget the euro is already the world's second most commonly held reserve currency. And even though the European Union and the US are allies, it hasn't stopped the European Commission from having big plans to increase the use of the euro in global payments and take on the mighty greenback. Now, I still remember their 2018 proposal to boost the euro's role after former US President Donald Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal on his own. Things have definitely cooled down a bit since then, but recent comments from major EU economies indicate that there's still some tension and a little bit of rivalry. French President Emmanuel Macron, he went as far as warning about the extraterritoriality of the US dollar and suggesting in an interview that Europe should reduce its reliance on the greenback. It's like he's saying, hey, let's not depend so much on the US dollar, folks. And last but not least, the BRICS currency. Now, this is really one of those to watch out for. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the BRICS nations, they've been eyeing a euro-like common currency among their nations. Brazilian President Luiz da Silva, he said while he was in China, quote, "Why can't we do trade based on our own currencies? Who was it that decided that the dollar was the currency after the disappearance of the gold standard?" End quote. They're set to talk about this in their August meeting, so look forward to that development. Of course, you can count on me to keep you guys posted on this and any other updates. All you need to do is not miss it. So make sure you're always subscribed to the channel and make sure that notification bell's turned on. Sometimes mysterious forces seem to be unsubscribing people from my channel, so make sure you're still subscribed. Maybe it wants to take views away from the truth that's covered here on the channel. Who knows? Well, let's keep fighting the good fight, guys. This was our de-dollarization update and daily news report. BRICS nations and other countries making big moves to take away the dollar's reserve currency status. Some alternative assets that you can look into and exactly how we can stay safe in this uncertain economy. By the way, you should see 2 videos right here. Click on these important videos, check them out. Feel free to drop your thoughts and your comments in the comment section down below. Really appreciate you guys watching. Please be safe, please be kind to one another, and I will see you guys on the next video.